See if I'm live on the YouTubes. I think I'm live on the YouTubes. Welcome, everyone. It's Career Happy Hour. It's Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific Time. It's happy hour somewhere. Let me make sure that I'm active here live on LinkedIn because that's where I answer most of my chats. But if you are joining, go ahead and join. Happy to have you. We'll get to the presentation here in just a moment. But let me know where you're joining from. Let me know where you're joining from. Happy to have you. Welcome, everyone. It's Andrew Beach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate your value to find great opportunity faster. That's whether you're working or not. If you're looking for promotions, advice on networking, market planning, and of course, all things career, please ask your questions. Good to have you, Heidi. Hi, welcome. Put your questions down in the chitty chat box. I think it's over on the left-hand side, so it's good to have you. I'm here to answer all your questions. We're using a hashtag here, by the way, every Friday during happy hour. Now, happy hour for me is actually between 3 and 6 on Fridays because that's when most of the places I would go for happy hour actually have it. You know, it's every day of the week, but Friday, there's something special about Friday. Wouldn't you agree? I think so too. Go ahead and put your questions in the chat box. I'm happy to answer. This is free career coaching. Any questions regarding interviewing, networking, market planning, resume? I'll answer questions about resume, don't worry. Anything to do with branding, networking, that sort of thing. I'm happy to answer anything that you put in the box. Hey, Shannon, good to have you. Welcome, Minneapolis. I understand that's the mini apple. Is that right? Good to have you. So here's the thing. There's a couple of things that happened this week that I think you should all know about. The first one actually, I think was yesterday or maybe day before. LinkedIn had their annual Talent Connect, and there were some really good things going on there. Now, I'm not one to be invested or at least supportive of talent acquisition as a domain, but in this case, there were some very good things that came out of that. And I'd like you to check. In fact, I'll put the link to the video. Jeff Weiner did a great video or presentation on what I would call, what did he call it? The +1 pledge. And this is an opportunity for anyone to do networking, say yes. And so that's the title of today's FAQ Friday, if you will, is that there is a lot of power in saying yes. And so the idea here would be that you, by saying yes to somebody in your network, are offering them an opportunity to connect to others and have success. That is what I put under the category of paying it forward. Each one of us, whether we're working, whether we're not working, should be in the habit of contributing to others and making a difference. And so the hashtag that they're using for that is the +1 pledge, and you'll see that on the screen. And so really I want to make it comfortable for you to say yes to people. In this case, it's flipped from what we talked about last week, and that is, I'm sure this has happened to you because I know it's happened to me. Someone reaches out to you, they're asking for assistance, and you just turn a deaf ear. You delete the message. You don't do anything with that. So I would turn that around and I would encourage you to say yes whenever possible. And I see Heidi, perfect example here on the stream today. Everybody that I've sent her direction, she is open hands. And I think that's going to serve her well in her career. Why? Well, because if you pay it forward with somebody else, it's likely that that's going to come around full circle for you. What you put in is what you get out. So I want to thank Heidi publicly for your accessibility and your willingness to help other people. I find that a true virtue. And that's something you should put on your LinkedIn and on your resume. I give you permission. I'll endorse you for it. How's that? Okay. So the first thing was, yes, Jeff Weiner, hopefully I'm saying that right, had a general state of the union for LinkedIn and where talent was going. And he made this challenge. But there was a lot of other interesting things happening there. And he actually showed in the time that he'd been there that the company had gone from 80 million in revenue, I think, to something like 50 billion, or I don't know what it is, but look it up. I put the link to the general speech that he had given. I don't know if you'd call it a keynote, but it is his State of the Union for LinkedIn. And there's a lot of interesting things that came up in there in terms of the technology, where the platform is headed, the introduction of skills-based assessments that you can now attach to your profile. These are all really interesting developments that will help you get the most out of LinkedIn and actually position yourself well in your career. So take a look at that. Another theme, if you will, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat box. I'm happy to answer anything regarding career. This is free career coaching. So for what it's worth, I'm happy to provide it every Friday during happy hour. You can use the hashtag RedQuorama. That's just one that I've put together that makes it very easy for me to find any questions that you ask. You'll see that on the screen over here to the left. But the other theme that I saw this week is something around distraction. And I would put a lot of folks that are in career transition or maybe trying to improve their career, they get distracted, they get off track. And there's things that happen. I get that. In fact, it's funny, this week, I think the big thing that happened in our household is we had a laundry drain, right? So all the laundry that we do for our large family, that drain was plugged. It needed to be cleaned out. Guess who got that honor? And I'm happy to do it. Not that I was glad to do it, but I'm happy to do it to support my family. But what that did was, not that it was a distraction, but there's things that could derail you, get you off track. And then it's like, okay, once I got that done, I didn't, sometimes you just don't know where to start again. And in this process, I think we really need to establish layers of value. Certainly activities have more value than others. And the one that always gets overlooked in a career transition or a career acquisition project or process is the networking, okay? And so if we know that networking is the number one way to find work today, how do we do that? And how do we make that a priority? And how do we come back to that when we get off track? And I would just encourage you, go back to the well. Start going through your connections. Even download your connections. You know that on LinkedIn you can do that, right? You can go to the settings, you can download all your connections, and it includes all of their contact information. So it's a nice way for you to go through there, just A to Z, reconnect with everybody, and get over the distraction. Or perhaps you got knocked down because you had an interview and you didn't get a positive response. That happens. And the biggest thing that you can do to recover from an interview not coming the way you want it to is to go get another interview. I know it sounds weird, but I have seen so many times someone go down the path, maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks with a company, and they didn't recognize what got them that interview in the first place, into that hiring process. All of a sudden, that requisition was pulled or put on hold, or they did a reorganization and they had to repost it. I've now extended my hiring process, my acquisition of that opportunity. I've now extended that process to where I was in coordination, in conversation with people, and now I'm not. And occasionally, yes, you have to prep for that interview. Yes, I get that. You have to set aside time to practice. And all that preparation is critically important. But let's not forget what got us there in the first place. Even though you're doing that preparation, budget some time, even if it's 15 minutes. Everybody's got 15 minutes. We all waste 15 minutes on LinkedIn, honestly, on Facebook, on Instagram, any of the social networks that you can name. We waste equally as much time on those platforms as we could reaching out to somebody to have a conversation, making 3 or 4 new connection requests, just doing something to keep our network in a rhythm, keep a pulse on our network, right? Maybe that's just you going into your notification tabs and saying, hey, congratulations on the new role. Man, I haven't talked to that person in a while. Maybe I should schedule some time, talk to them on the phone for a couple minutes. Just say, hey, what's up? How's it going? It could be that somebody's having a birthday. Now in the notification tab, the cool part is, what is one of the easiest things you can do on a birthday in the notification tab? Let me think. Well, if I'm on my mobile device, I could actually endorse them for some skills. I could actually, in my own voice, do a voice recording, say, hey, happy birthday. Hope you have a great day. This is Andrew. We should get together soon, have a coffee, a cocktail, a lunch. Okay? That's 3 things anybody can do. Everybody's got to eat, right? Some of us need coffee and cocktails. It just depends on our frame of mind, I suppose. But the idea is, hey, let's stay present, let's stay connected for the purpose of paying it forward or making a contribution in hopes of that coming into equilibrium at some point in the future. Okay? So please overcome those distractions. I know, it's so funny because I can go into this platform called LinkedIn and they're serving up to me all the time opportunities that are a fit for me. Hey, are you interested in this job? Hey, are you interested in this company? Hey, so-and-so posted a new job. So they're always in there using artificial intelligence, machine learning to feed me things that I think I'll like. And I know how tempting it is to put in an online application. Now, trust me, the market is relatively good, but there's still people having trouble. I see it every day. And the one ingredient that they're missing is the networking piece. And so if they know, and if you know that 80, 90% of the opportunities are through the social activity called networking, then why are we not spending 80, 90% of our time in that activity? It's a good question, right? Now, if you're working, you may not feel the need to do the networking. And I tell you, that's exactly when you should be doing it. Now, your purpose for networking might change if you're working, and we can talk some about that. But if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat. I'm happy to answer. I'm a firm believer that each one of us, when we're working, should have a list of 12 people. In fact, you could probably, hang on, you could probably just stick those 12 people, each one, on a 3x5 card and just put their name, their cell number on there. And literally, when you're driving home from the office, you could have that on your visor. You pull it off your visor and you say, okay, who this week am I supposed to talk to? 12 people. Guess what? That divides into a quarter. If I have 12 people, each one has a card. I just write down the name of that person, the date I called, or maybe I look and say, you know what? I called them last time. Why don't I send them a text message? Send them a text. Okay? I sent them a text last time. Why don't I just do a quick little video on my phone and send them a video? It would be funny if you do that. I don't know if I'd be doing that while I was driving. So you might want to pull over for that one. But the idea is you can certainly send them something by email, by text message, a phone call on the way home from work. Now, you don't want to call them up and say, hey, I'm on my home from work. Thought I'd fill some space in my schedule by talking to you. That doesn't make you feel honored and appreciated, that's for sure. I encourage you, think of something good, a contribution you can make, just to touch base. And recognize that even though you might have 12 of these cards, you might actually end up throwing one out. Maybe they retired. Maybe they moved on to something else. It's just really you keeping that 12 cards shuffled in your deck all the time. All the time. Okay? Looks like we've got 12 people on the live stream. Thanks for joining. Let me see if there's any chats over here on the YouTube side of things. I simulcast this on 4 channels. LinkedIn Live. I also do it on YouTube, Periscope, and Facebook. So if you're joining me on any one of those platforms, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And I'll go ahead and put that same link to that Jeff Weiner speech keynote. I'll just call it a keynote. It's his, he's the CEO of the company, so it's not really a keynote. So I don't know what you would call that. State of the Union for LinkedIn. On a different note, I actually have a couple things to let you know about. One, I'm going to put up on YouTube a new tutorial on LinkedIn. What I found is there's a lot of people that are hiding their connections. And so they have their privacy settings, sometimes unknown to them, set to a way that people don't see their connections once their networks are first degree. And so I'll put that one up. The second thing is I have another podcast episode The podcast is actually jobseekersradio.com, and I'll put that in the chat as well. Jobseekersradio.com/listen. Okay. You can find the podcast there, and there's going to be a new episode coming up next week. It's called The Best Questions to Ask at the Interview. Something we miss often when we go to an interview is we feel like they should ask, we should answer. They should ask, we should answer. Well, some of that's true. Yes, you should answer, but don't you also have an opportunity to ask questions back? I would encourage you, yes, it's a good idea to have some questions put together so that you can serve yourself well at the interview, okay? Now, I see there's maybe a dozen people on today's stream. If you could just let me know what questions you have about career, resume, networking, market planning, interviewing, anything related to your career, any questions at all, nothing's out of bounds. As long as it's not a personal question, okay? Happy to answer. So you can put that on the chat box here in LinkedIn and also in YouTube. Another funny story. It's actually trash day here on Fridays in our homestead, in our household. And it always seems like there's somebody going through our stuff to get some recyclables. But anyway, there's always noise outside, so I apologize if you hear anything on trash day. And my daughter's getting some things out of the ice maker. Anyhow, so if you have any questions, I'm here to answer. I'm all ears. If you want to sign off and go get your own happy hour, I'm happy to sign off. But anything you can do to put some questions in the chat, I'm happy to answer. Let me see what we got here. Marketing specialist. So Heidi, are you still here? What about Shannon? Are you still here? I wonder if there's a way to see who's on the stream. I don't think it actually shows me who's on the stream. I've been using this LinkedIn Live for several weeks, and I come here every Friday at 3 p.m., and I can see how many people are on here, but I don't know who they are. So let me know who you are and where you're joining from. Looks like we got some folks from Minneapolis, some folks from Seattle, people in my network. Welcome, welcome. Hey, Jim, good to have you. So good question, Jim. Recruiters, what should I be aware of and how should I engage with them? That's a great question. Now, you have to recognize that about 10% of your time should be spent with the recruitment function. And the reason I say that is because typically the recruiters are not the ones doing the hiring per se. They're the ones facilitating the hiring. And you can probably appreciate that being a financial analyst. But the idea here is that if you want to be engaged with recruiters, I would encourage you to take the approach that this person is a person, number one. Number two, if you want to engage with recruiters, I'm always looking to find out so here's a question you could ask a recruiter that I think might be valuable. What is the number one requisition that you have right now that you're having the hardest time filling? Because it might not be the one you're interested in, okay? And every recruiter that I know is working 20, 30, 40 recs at one time, couple hundred applicants per requisition. And there's always one that they're like, wow, this one is just really hard, really difficult. And so you add value to yourself by adding value to the recruiter. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is, look for some retained search firms. So if you're in a specific vertical industry or if you have a unique set of skills, I would be looking for retained search firms. And you can search those here on LinkedIn. Just type in retained search finance. And you'll typically find people that have a focus in that area because that's much different than a recruiter. And so really understand what you mean by recruiter, okay? Shannon, tips for requesting a networking interview with the hiring manager. Hi, my name is Shannon. I would like to have a conversation with you about fill in the blank. Now, fill in the blank doesn't really go across well if it's I need a job, okay? I want to have a conversation with you about my need for employment. That's not a strategic conversation, is it? I would encourage you to think about, what is that hiring manager potentially wrestling with that you have a solution for? Okay? Position it that way so it can be a conversation of value, not of reactive nature, right? Hey, I applied for this role. I put in my application. I haven't heard anything back. Can I have a conversation with you about this role? That probably isn't going to go well, okay? Hey, I see you have success building your organization in this kind of way. Maybe there was a press release or some sort of initiative they did, or a marketing campaign that you were really impressed by. Let them know that. Hey, congratulations. I see you beat expectations. I also noticed you did a great campaign in this way. I'd like to connect with you and have a conversation about our shared experience in this area and to get your perspective. Who wouldn't say yes to that? Now, that's a silly question, actually. There's a lot of people that wouldn't say yes to that, and it's the ones that have their head in the sand or just aren't on LinkedIn. And that's okay. Recognize that even though you're reaching out to that one person may say no. That's just the law of averages. You might have to reach out to 10 or 15 hiring managers before you get a solid conversation of value, of strategic value to both parties. Okay? But the idea is that you can get this person's attention, hiring manager, by also having a solid profile, posting some content around your domain of expertise, maybe sharing an article that you thought was valid, interacting in groups those hiring managers are a part of here on LinkedIn. So there's lots of ways that you can get the attention, but there isn't anything magical about asking for a conversation, okay? I also wouldn't overlook the idea of a mutual connection. So maybe there's somebody knows that person a little bit better than you do, and you might have an opportunity to get an introduction, or you have a shared meeting of some kind during happy hour. This is career happy hour on Friday, right? FAQ Friday, but I think I consider it career happy hour. So yeah, there's lots of ways you can get to the hiring manager and have those conversations. The first step, I think, in all of our minds is realizing this is just another person that's probably facing some challenges in the workplace and day-to-day activities that are just normal for a human being, but they also appreciate the opportunity that someone has a solution to some of their problems so that they can spend more strategic time in their day focused on activities that are higher value. So what you're doing is you're actually doing them a favor by approaching them and having a conversation that way. But if you want more tips on that, Shannon, I would actually encourage you to go check out my podcast, jobseekersradio.com. There's actually a link, I think, in the chat here. I guess I can also put it in the description, edit post. And so I'll put it in the description as well, if that's okay. Maybe I can grab that link. Come on now, copy link address. There we go. I'll put it in the description. Hit enter, save. There we go. Okay, it's up in the description for the video now, so you'll see it up there. And we have a free resource up there. Actually, it's called the Anatomy of a Networking Conversation. And so there's a series of podcasts that Scott and I did that come with a companion document. So you can get that free resource at jobseekersradio.com. There's links all over the page, and I think there's even a pop-up that comes up if you try to exit the page. So you should be able to access that. I think it's really a wonderful resource for you to understand kind of the anatomy of how it works and ways to reach out, and a process that you can validate and use to your benefit. Okay. Excellent questions, everybody. If you have any additional questions, go ahead and leave those in the chat. Happy to answer. How long have we been on now? Looks like we've been on for 24 minutes. That's a good stretch. Yeah, if there's no further questions, I can bug out, and hope you guys have a great weekend. I do appreciate all of you that are so loyally visiting with me here on Fridays at 3 o'clock Pacific, answering all of your career questions. And I want to wish you a great weekend and happy networking. Oh, John asks, hey, John, welcome. How do you find managers who have open positions to fill? John, so that's a great question. You have to go have conversation with them. You have to ask them. And here's the thing, is that every company, in my estimation, has a process that they follow when they have a need, okay? So I'm a hiring manager, I have a need. What is that need? Well, maybe it's fiscal year, starting a new fiscal year, got a new strategy. New strategy says I need to have a resource to execute it. That resource indicates that it's either, well, maybe I need a strategic partner or a vendor, or I need to hire somebody, okay? Now I've created the need for a requisition well in advance of somebody in HR even hearing about it, okay? Now, what I'm encouraging most people to do is swim upstream to have those strategic conversations of significance with the hiring manager when he has those thoughts, when he's making those plans, those strategic plans for the next, 3 to 5 years, when a new budget cycle is coming active, okay? Now, the thing is, John, and it's a great question, by the way, is that depends on you. And part of your process, part of any of our processes, is identifying who we are, what we're good at, and what we love doing. Because those are three things that make up a brand. And often we look at, hey, here's what I've done. I'm going to continue doing that just because. That's not very compelling narrative, certainly. And so each one of us has to identify what it is we're good at and the type of companies we'd like to work for. What is that for you? And so once you answer those questions, the conversations are easy. You don't talk to them about need for employment. You talk about what they're doing strategically in your area of expertise to solve this common problem that seems to be popping up all the time, okay? So if you position yourself as a solution to a problem, you're going to have much better opportunity to have success in your networking and connecting with those hiring managers, okay? And I haven't yet met a hiring manager that was good, I'll put it that way, that didn't have the capacity or the horsepower to add a position if he thought that person had strategic value to the future of the organization. He would, you'd have to create a position. Of course, that takes time, but you're in the driver's seat. They may have to post it, yes, but who did they write that position for? They wrote it for you, and that's great. So all the requirements are aligned with your strengths, and then they post it, and they interview, and then they hire you, okay? That's a position of strength. Position of weakness is just putting in an application. That's a very weak position. You don't have any relationships. You don't know any of the current events inside the company. What they publish might not equal what they really need. That's why it's important you have face-to-face conversations of value with those folks, okay? Thanks for that question, John. I appreciate that. I think we're pushing 30 minutes now, if I'm seeing that right. So I hope you all have a good weekend. Appreciate the questions in the chat. Remember, I'm here every Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, answering your career questions. All right, folks, have a good weekend. All the best. I hope you find what you're looking for. And if you have any further questions or concerns, please contact me on LinkedIn or any of the social channels that you can find me. This is Andrew Beach, Executive Coach, signing off.